Hello everyone and welcome to another Tinfoil Spotlight video where we look at one particular tinfoil subject or video. Today we're looking at people who think martial arts are the work of Satan. This is only slightly related to the fact that I've been very into tokusatsu lately, and y'all know that I'm into like Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan movies, Hong Kong cinema, Shawscope stuff, so that's fun. But we actually watched a little bit of this video, like 10-15 minutes of it at one point on a Tinfoil, and I decided I'd rather watch this video and its sequel in whole on another stream. This is that stream. So we're going to be watching that, and that'll be fun. Real quick before we get into it, though, I do have a teaser for a documentary coming out in 3 days, I believe next Wednesday, on James Janney's channel. So let's take a look at this real quick.
On the internet, there's practically...
This is in regard to meme stocks, by the way.
A community for... On the internet, there's practically a community for everything.
Marantz is big mad about this upcoming documentary. He is, and he also invited me to talk to him next week, because I assume he wants to get attention off of it. I don't know.
But I haven't
decided if I'm gonna say yes yet.
Seen something quite like this. Where do I begin? In early 2021, there was this giant mania that took the media by storm.
There's no way you could have avoided this story over the past few days.
Ordinary citizens from across the world had gathered to buy the shares of one particular retail store.
What the hell is happening with GameStop?
Thousands are banding together, pushing the stock price way up.
Cheers, everybody!
Seemed to shake Wall Street to its core.
It was supposed to be this David versus Goliath story.
The little guy has power.
Hedge funds have lost billions.
The world believed the story ended after that mania all those years ago. I believe the story ended all those years ago. There's just one problem. It didn't. It was only the beginning.
I believe in GameStop as a company.
I buy a share pretty much every single calendar day.
We're here to make a lot of money.
I wanted to know the truth.
These people are fucking crazy.
But what I thought would be a simple investigation,
yeah, it became a cult.
Turned into something much larger than I could have imagined.
Yeah, I've been in contact with James over this because, surprise, I'm in this documentary. I sat down for like 5 hours of interviews with him, which was interesting. It was nice getting to talk with him. He's been working on this. It was supposed to come out like 6 months to a year ago. So he kept having to add to it because stuff kept happening.
His mind became...
And that's nothing, by the way. Marantz did like 8 hours of interview with him.
just obsessed with the conspiracy behind it.
This is insanity, how corrupt everything is.
Aren't you tired of the rich fucking you over?
I googled GameStop is a cult.
Ryan Cohen is taking over as GameStop CEO.
Mean King Ryan Cohen.
They made a cult around him.
Like some sort of messiah figure.
He secretly communicates with them and tells them what they need to be doing.
People are losing their lives because of this shit.
They're not only hurting themselves, they're hurting the people around them.
Is basically...
That was me! I'm in this!
The end times for capital.
My hair looked really bad in that interview, though, so that's not great, but what are you gonna do?
So.
James, you don't know what you're getting yourself into.
I was the little stinger in the trailer, though. Like the thing where, like, they're hurting, blah, 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 blah. And yeah. You know that stinger in a documentary trailer where they're like, people are gonna get hurt? That was me! I was the voice for that! So that'll be fun. I have no idea how much I'll be in it, to be honest. I don't know. I had nothing to do with the post-production. I just did the interview I did. So I don't know if I'll be in it for a minute, or 5 minutes, or 10 minutes, or much at all, or if I'll just be used in the trailer. I don't know. But, maybe check that out on Wednesday, because I'm in it. At least somewhat. So anyway, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and start the video that I wanted to do, and this is the hidden darkness behind martial arts. Ashley one up, thanks for 23 months. A lot of good times, I'm glad. Unstable Deadbeat with 100 bits says, Hannah is always the voice of reason in an unreasonable world. I wouldn't take that much credit. Hannah's in what? I was taking the dog outside? I'm in all of your minds. Irrevocably. You can't get me out.
I was only about 4 or 5 years old as I watched in amazement as a little Oriental man
That's not the preferred nomenclature, my friend.
performed seemingly impossible feats of skill and power. A seed was planted that day, a seed which grew silently within my heart for the next 10 years of my young life. I never forgot the exhibition that I had seen that day, and I dreamed of the possibility of doing those things which I had watched that little old Asian man demonstrate with such ease. But little did I realize the darkness into which this path I was now following would lead.
Ooh, intense. See, this is what I'm talking about. Like, this is the part in the teaser where it's like, oh, things are gonna get bad. I was that in the previous trailer. I'm doing good, Anthony Schuler. How are you? Italian Shakespeare says, if you're gonna getting into toku, here's one of the oldies, pre-World War II, and the 60s film is easy to find. Oh, Golden Bat. I have a live-action toku version of this. That's not anime. I have a live-action version of this that came from Shout Factory. They did a tokusatsu collection that I got a while back. Moa Emery's of the Caldera, thanks for 31 months, says 31 months, more coal for the oncoming hype train. Overthought, thanks for gifting a sub, and we are on a hype train, just got over level 1. Thank you, everyone. It is still September, so subscriptions are 30% off, and they help support the channel, so I'd appreciate it.
For the lives that my decision that day would influence and forever change. Today,
there are no captions on this video, by the way. I apologize. I try to do captions when I can.
Today, the martial arts are looked upon as sport, as self-defense, health and fitness, and often as a form of artistic expression.
Correct. Those are the things that they are, rather. It's also pretty deeply culturally entrenched in the nations and cultures where these things were created and fostered.
But is this the way it has always been? Who are these men and women who dedicate their lives to these arts and amaze onlookers with their incredible feats of almost superhuman strength and speed? How are these abilities attained? And from whence comes
hard work, training? Those are the things.
The philosophies and spiritual teachings.
Maybe steroids? Are steroids a thing in martial arts? Because martial arts are less about the strength of it and more about the form, generally. Like, strength is certainly a thing, breaking certain things, but it feels like a lot of it's more about the movement and the form, you know? I don't know. I don't know if there's any sort of sports issue in competitive martial arts.
Which permeate these practices. Why do we see such a growing influence of Eastern philosophy and mystical practices within the Christian church over the last 10 years?
Do we?
Are these practices focused merely on athletic ability, or are they being used to prepare mankind for the coming of a world teacher and 1,000 years of peace?
It's the former. You're the one trying to imbue weird, like, anti-Christ ideology into people doing, in the United States, effectively what is a sport. I'm sure there's plenty of people in the United States from other places who have culturally significant connections to various martial arts. But, like, most people in the United States, it's like, oh, let's learn a sport. Or something that's physically engaging, you know? Or, like, Tai Chi, right? That's fine. It's not evil. Everything that isn't about you isn't evil. This is such a problem with evangelicals. Oh my goodness, a thing that isn't directly invented to glorify Jesus. It must be evil. Ultra Undying says, my favorite martial arts is savate. It's great to see someone run up someone else to kick them in the face. I probably mispronounced that. And Moa Emery of the Caldera says, the Moa is pronounced Mao, like a shorthand meow, or the late communist Chinese chairman. Okay, sorry, Mao. My bad.
Are these
4% to level 2 on the hype train?
Eastern mystical arts based merely on human talent and ability? Or is there something much darker and more elusive working behind the scenes?
I will say, you gotta take it on some level as impressive, right? That you're so skilled at using your body to do certain actions that crazy people will accuse you of being in league with Satan. You gotta put that on a resume. I'm so good at kicks that people think I'm imbued with dark spiritual powers. Lennon Cat with 40 bits says, is martial arts just becoming popular because it's fun and people enjoy it? Or is Kung Fu a herald of darkness and the harbinger of the end times. I'm not sure, but I'm going to assume it's the latter because it gets more views.
The first time that I was exposed to martial arts, I don't remember where I was, but I remember I saw something on television, and it was a picture of this little Chinese man, and he was demonstrating martial arts ability. And he took an egg and set it on the ground and stepped up onto the egg and stood there. And it was only for, 20 seconds, but he stood.
Pretty sure that one's a trick. Like, there's a pretty fine line sometimes between actual impressive feats of martial arts and someone just pulling a gag on you. That one feels like a gag. 30 seconds on the hype train. Benekagami says, I hate House Republicans so much. The Subcommittee of Oversight released a press release that said apparently a transcript reveals that Trump sent orders to the Pentagon for them to keep January 6th safe. That allegedly went ignored. Of course, MAGA eats it up, claiming this ends the January 6th debate, but of course ignore the obvious. There's no release of this transcript, and it's not the Pentagon's job to provide security for a protest. That's the police and many more. I mean, yeah, they're gonna paint a narrative because the election's coming up. Nemesaur, thanks for gifting 10 tier 1 subs and saving the hype train, 54% to level 4.
On top of that egg.
I don't know, maybe it's just, I'm just numb to Republicans making shit up at this point. Like, it's what they're gonna do. Like, you can't be surprised forever. You can only be Charlie Brown, Lucy football tricked so many times. Like, yep, they're liars and scumbags. Correct. Yes.
And then he stepped off. And I was a little child. That's always stayed in my mind, when I saw that, because I thought, wow, that's almost like a miracle, that he could do that. When I was 12 years old, my parents went through a separation and a divorce. And it devastated my life. I became very rebellious. I was angry. I know that neither one of my parents ever intended to hurt me, but I felt abandoned. I felt rejected. I felt like I wasn't worth fighting for.
What was the direction in this scene? Like, no, kid, hit these branches with your toy sword real hard. Like, you're sad your parents don't love you.
And during that time, I began really searching for some purpose to life, for some.
Is this supposed to show that the kid is troubled because he's pretend sword fighting a monster that's actually just a tree? Because I feel like this is just like a normal kid thing. Like, don't get me wrong, as an adult, I might be like, hey, don't damage the tree. But, like a kid just swinging it like a tree branch and pretending isn't a troubled child. That's just a child.
Reason to be a man. I mean, what is the reason for being here? And I remember talking to my mother one day
and a midlife crisis at 6 years old.
Possibly looking for a martial arts school, because that memory of seeing that picture always stayed in my mind. And we found a school downtown in the city where I live. And we went down there one evening.
I like that he said downtown like it's ominous too. Like, we went downtown, not the suburbs. Is that scary?
After she got off work. And I'll remember to this day that walk. We were walking down the street. It was a downtown, rough part of the town. And the dusk was coming in. The only lights were the street lights, and they were just beginning to glow. And while we're walking down...
Why did you go to this place at night? You're acting like it's ominous. You chose to go at nighttime, at dusk, and you're like, ooh, it was ominous and the street lights were on. Yeah, it's nighttime.
Down there, I mean, you can see like the pool hall. They're turning the lights on there. The
night pool hall. Oh my goodness, trouble in River City, my friend. And that's with a capital T, and that rhymes with P, and that stands for pool.
Life was starting to awaken. There's all these old brick buildings and warehouses.
You mean Tartarian buildings, sir?
And we're walking down the sidewalk, and all the shops were closed, all the little mom and pop stores. And we finally came to this building, this old brick building. It was probably 3 stories, maybe 4 stories tall. And I remember when my mom and I were walking up, we're looking for this door for a name of a school. And we were expecting it to be, like it is today, this really elaborate, nice, modern. And we found this little doorway. I mean, it wasn't even a full door. a tiny little wooden door, and it had...
I mean, I'm assuming it was a full door. You walked in it. Minute left on the hype train. Mao Emery's of Caldera says, because downtown is your home address when your life's a mess. Oh, don't get me started.
The name of
my favorite song from that play. I used to sing it all the time at home when I was a kid when no one else was home.
The dojo. On
poor. All my life I've always been poor. I keep asking God what I'm for. Something he says, sweep that floor, kid. I forgot the lyrics on that part.
Door.
Oh, I've always spent an orphan a life on the street here on Skid Row. Stone Doorbell, thanks for gifting a sub. 78% to level 4.
So we opened the door up, and as soon as we opened the door up, we could look up and we could see a light at the top of the narrow staircase. And my mom and I started walking up that staircase, and as we're walking up, we could hear...
Italian Shakespeare says, Hannah, is this guy so old that the racist idea of, quote, yellow peril, aka Asian people are and culture are evil and scary for no reason, is a thing he was raised on? That's what gets me. He's old enough that it feels like he should more be in the period where there's almost this thing where sometimes when culturally we will take something and make racist characters of it, of evil, like what you're talking about, the quote yellow peril trope, and then we go the opposite on it in a way that's still offensive, but like almost the opposite. In the 80s, there was almost a switch that flipped and it went to like mysticizing the East. I'm thinking of characters like Mr. Miyagi, the guy who sold the Mogwai in Gremlins, where it's still treated as othered and mystical, but not inherently evil. In fact, it might be turned towards good. But he more grew up in that era, it feels like. So it's interesting to me that he feels like he's from an era where he is full of the sort of yellow peril, Fu Manchu type racism, but he probably grew up in the 1980s mystical East racism. So I'm not sure. I think this is just evangelical Christianity that got to him. And unfortunately, within evangelical Christianity, there's a huge anxiety about cultures that are different from their own. So it sort of applies that same racist yellow peril logic to this and other racist beliefs to other cultures. You see this with Bob Larson and other evangelicals that'll be like, oh, any culture other than your own, they're deities or spiritually significant characters. They're all demons. It's not just that there are different cultures and beliefs. It's that it's all part of Christianity. They just don't know they're evil. The whole thing. Stone Corbell says he's trying real hard to make this a normal walk through town sound sinister, isn't he?
The shop.
What are we covering? No, we're doing this video about how martial arts is evil. It's in the title.
The kia, the students, yelling. We could hear, the instructor, commanding the students what to do. And
wait a minute, the teacher was commanding the students what to do? Sounds sus. That's very sinister. Why aren't the students teaching the master?
I mean, I remember feeling my heart begin to quicken. And I was like, yeah, I'm finally here. Something I've dreamed about, forever. And we got to the top of the steps and
there is no pain in this dojo.
Stepped into the studio.
There is no mercy in this dojo.
And
if a man comes at you on the street, he is your enemy.
Here's
strike first, strike hard.
This man.
No mercy.
In a white uniform with this old black belt. I mean, it was, just faded with age.
Sorry, Fenekagami. Fenekagami said, it's so frustrating because I hate feeling like a conspiracy theorist going, well, the Republican said it, so it's obviously a lie. I hate this state of things. Anyway, fun fact, the breaking thing in martial arts is combination of form and mental preparation. You have to hit it in the center with the right part of your body to avoid damage and make sure you follow through and not let your potential pain cause you to pull back. Pretty easy if you follow that advice. Not for me. My physical body is not to be used for any sort of activity that requires excellence or precision.
And he's giving these orders to these students, and there was the utmost feeling of respect. I mean, all these students are doing exactly what he says, exactly when he says it. And they're doing these forms, these katas, punching and blocking, and the kicks and the yells. And I remember trying to take in the whole scene. There's calligraphy, Japanese calligraphy and Okinawan calligraphy on the walls.
Calligraphy? You mean Satan's fingerprints?
And there's pictures of old masters and people that have died, the founders of the art. And we stayed there for probably 35, 40 minutes,
Is he trying to make it sound ominous that they have photos of dead people? A lot of people have photos of dead people. That's one of the reasons you have photos, to remember people that are gone. That's not sinister.
Watching. When the instructor got a break, he came back over to us and started talking with my mother and I. I had to have my mom's approval, to do this. And
yeah, you were a child. You need your parents' permission to do anything. You were like 12.
I remember the instructor, talking about the classes and the schedule, and I was getting so excited. And then we got down to the end of how much does it cost? And this was back probably 83, 82, somewhere in there.
It won't cost you any money. And I always thought it was weird that he laughed like that.
He tells us the price, and I saw my mom's eyes, and I knew it was too much, because we were very limited on our income with my mom and dad being separated. And
Fenekagami says every Christian has a picture of a dead person, Jesus. Ah, but they would say he's not dead. He came back from the dead after 3 days and ascended to heaven bodily, so he's not dead. He's surely alive, roaring like a lion.
We thanked
Newsboys.
Thanked him, told him we would think about it, and we walked out of the dojo. We walked back down those steps. I remember as we were walking down those steps and I stepped out onto the street, it was like the wind had been taken out of my sails. I thought, here this dream was, and I thought this was it. And now I knew there was no way that we could do it because the price was just too much. So my mom and I are walking down the street, and I could sense that my mother felt uncomfortable. Not just about the price, but more importantly, she felt uncomfortable about something in the dojo.
I mean, did you ever talk to her about this, or are you literally trying to relay your feelings about what your mother was thinking 30 years ago when you were like 10? Because that's not... We don't know what she was thinking. She was probably disappointed she couldn't do something for her kid. Like, that's what I would feel if I had a kid and they wanted to do something badly and we didn't have the money to afford them to do that activity. I'd be like, oh man, I feel like I suck. I feel like I'm failing. Like, it's just part of life and you gotta deal with it, but it would be a sad thing. You want to provide for your kids and give them experiences and allow them to do activities that they want. And when you can't, that sucks. Not nefarious. Fenekagami says that means he's a witch, burn him! I'm against that. As a witch. Ashley One Up says, you're telling me I could have paid money instead of selling my soul for karate lessons? I'm not sure if I got ripped off or not. How good are you?
And even though I was so excited about, participating and becoming part of this, I had sensed the same thing. I was raised as a Christian. We went to church.
Yeah, exactly, Amber.
And yet there was something about what we had witnessed, about the power and about the violence, about
it's a sport! What do you mean the violence? It's literally, like, at worst you spar with each other? That's the activity. It would be like going into a wrestling practice and being like, oh, the violence! Like, it's a sport. It's a sport. It's consensual. It's not violent like people getting in a fight on the street.
The actions of the art.
I say this as someone who was in the wrestling team as a kid. Briefly.
That just didn't match. And I couldn't put my finger on it, and it didn't make me feel good, so I just dismissed it. And I knew my mom couldn't dismiss it. So we went home that night, and I didn't ask her what was on her mind, and she didn't tell me, but I knew.
Was I good? No, I was not good. You think is it even a question of was I good at wrestling? No, I wasn't good at wrestling.
A friend of mine.
I don't think I won a single match, ever, even in practice. Jronimus, thanks for 33 months, says, martial arts also teaches you to not be a violent person. I got here late. What's this guy's problem? His problem is he wants to make money grifting evangelicals into convincing them martial arts is satanic.
Their older brother was there at lunch. He was a junior or a senior. He was a couple years ahead of me. I was in high school.
Did I at least hold out a few minutes? Again, have you seen me? Have you seen me? And this was a wrestling team with boys, because this is before I came out. This is like, how do you think it went? Bad.
He started telling about this martial arts school that he had found, a kung fu school in the area. And he had been training there for, probably a year or two. And he was talking about it, and I asked him, I said, well, how much does it cost? And he said, you wouldn't believe it. He said, it's $1 a night. And I was like, you're serious? He said, yeah. And I said, well, what kind of school is it? Because I was thinking about my mom's apprehensions. And he told me, he said, the guy's a Christian. He said they have a Bible verse every night. He said, we train, we fight.
Oh, so it's a Bible study that you're disguising as martial arts in order to get kids to come and listen to you preach about Jesus. Cool beans.
But it's a Christian school, and it's $1 every time you come. There's no contract. And I was so excited. It was like all of a sudden my hopes and my dreams revived. I went home and told my mom about it, and she was excited. So the following week, my best friend and I, we decided to go visit this school. So we get to the school that evening, and I remember walking in the door, and it was very different from the Okinawan school, the karate dojo we'd went to.
This one was full of white people, and wouldn't you know it, I didn't have that creepy feeling. It's almost like I'm just racist and weird.
When we walked in, this was a very, very old building, single floor.
This looks creepier than the last one! Again, is it just because it had a white guy in charge? I was making a joke, but now I genuinely think he just wasn't creeped out because this one had a white guy in charge.
There were all these pictures. When I walked in, I remember walking past the wall, all these pictures of the higher level students in the school from the past 25 years. There was pictures of the men that had made black belt. There had only been 3 up to that point.
We watched a little bit of this video before peyote, and then I saved it for another stream to watch the whole thing. This is that stream.
In over 25 years. Pictures of the instructor, pictures of military background, pictures of just all these intriguing, mystical, ideas, thoughts of the martial arts. So we got there, and I began training. And this school was very unique.
Skinny white boys punching each other. Ashley One Up says, and here's that teacher in action. I kick ass for the Lord.
I kick ass for the Lord.
Solid.
They based
Thanks, Peter Jackson.
Rank on your ability, and there were only 4 ranks. You had white, green, brown, and black, and you could get a stripe in between, which meant you were just a little bit ahead of the other guys. But the only way to achieve rank was fighting, and we fought full contact, with boxing gloves, 12, 14, 16-ounce boxing gloves, and we also fought what's called empty hand or open hand. The thing that really intrigued me the most about this school is because it was a kung fu school, the fighting, when it was done open hand, was based on what's called animal styles. So if someone was a tiger stylist, if they were good, when you watched them spar or watched them fight, you would see them mimicking, the motions of a tiger with their hand positions, with their blocking, with their stances. If someone was a snake style, you would see.
I kind of get the vibe that this school was not very good at actually teaching traditional martial arts in any way.
Heads of the snakes or the heads of the cobra as they were fighting, you would see the techniques. And then the instructor, his primary style, although we taught all of them, his primary style was praying mantis. So
I believe the guy talking is the guy who made this video.
When they would fight, you would see the hand positions like the praying mantis, and the mantis was a close-in style. It drew its opponent in and crushed them on the inside. And I was so overwhelmed,
To be clear, I understand that there are actual traditional, martial arts that refer to certain styles by animals because there is a reference to the motion, but what I'm saying is it feels like this is barely that. This feels like something some white guy learned while he was in Asia somewhere, and then was like, I can do that, and then just kind of like copied it, but not great, like a game of telephone.
First night of seeing all these things, and the guys, you know,
I thought wushu was a style of kung fu.
Kicking, and I looked and I thought, you know,
I apologize if I'm wrong, depraved ambiance. I thought wushu was a specific sub category, because like my understanding was that that Jackie Chan was trained in wushu. Yeah, it's a style.
That's power. That's not just power, but control.
Bittergrin, thanks for a 45 stream streak.
It was like my life felt so out of control. I felt like I didn't have any control over anything that was happening to me. And this is what I wanted. I thought, that's what I want. I want to be able to control.
I'm getting different answers from different people in chat, so I gotta look it up at some point.
Circumstances. I want to be confident. I want to believe in myself. I want to know that whatever I set my mind to do, I can do. When we're there in class, you could tell the order, the hierarchy, if you will. You know, the white belts were the beginners, and they listened to the green belts, and the green belts were terrified of the brown belts, and the brown belts didn't want anything to do with the black belts, and there was this pecking order of authority. The thing that intrigued me or caught my attention to want to make green belt, to desire that green belt, was one night a week at 10 o'clock after all the other students had left the school, those that had made green belt were allowed to come in to the school, and they would shut the door on the training room, and they got private instruction from the sifu, the teacher. And no one was allowed to see or to talk about what was, you know, taught in there. So it was like immediately, it's like, what's behind the curtain? I mean, I want that. And you saw the green belts, their ability, and you saw what they could do. So you wanted to have that ability, and you realized the only way that they had that ability was because of that special training they were getting, you know, behind closed doors. Well, after I made green belt, you know, I got to go into that first class, and I remember there was sort of a basic initiation. When you stepped into the class, into that high rank class, you lay down on your back on the floor. They'd raise your shirt up, and every single one of them would get 2 slaps.
So hazing, this isn't good. This has nothing to do with martial arts. This has to do with the fact that you joined a really creepy, terrible group of adult men who wanted to be creepy towards you. No. This has nothing to do with the martial arts, sir. This has to do with the fact that you got together with a really sus group of people.
With an open palm on your belly, as hard as they felt you were able to handle. And nobody was going to get seriously injured. But I can remember I had marks on my stomach for 4 or 5 days
painful. As someone... I was going to make a joke. Never mind. No, this sounds painful. This sounds painful. Those slaps sound like legit. And the thing about getting slapped is the first slap is the one that hurts. The first slap is fine. It's the slaps preceding it, or coming after, rather. Like, the first slap is fine, but when you keep getting slapped on the same part that you're getting slapped on multiple times, the pain increases, like, exponentially. Like, that's not good.
I mean, it'd bring blood to the surface. But then you felt like you're part of something, like you had earned it. So I stayed there, and I trained for approximately 2 years. We had Bible verse each night. You know, there were people that gave their hearts to the Lord, made professions of faith.
Does he understand that what the part of this that was bad for him wasn't the martial arts part? It was the weird, culty, evangelical shit? Like, I don't think typical martial arts schools would ever instruct other students to hurt someone just for fun or hazing. This is 100% the Christian evangelical culture, toxic masculinity part. But instead of recognizing that was the problem, you're identifying the martial arts as the problem, even though the martial arts part was fine? Oh no.
But then I got to where I was graduating high school, and my dad offered to put me through college. He said, Eric, if you'll move down here with me, you know, outside Chattanooga, he said, I'll pay for your college. So I moved. I hated to leave that school because it meant so much to me, but that was the only school I'd ever, trained in. I didn't know there was anything else out there. And we were told that, we're #1. This is the best school. There's no other styles that do it like we do. And I thought, well, this will give me a chance to find out if that's true. So when I moved down to Cleveland, Tennessee, right outside Collegedale, I started looking for a school. Went through the phone book, and you can open the phone book up and there's all these advertisements, you know, and the bigger the town is, the more schools there are, the more dojos and studios. And, you know, some
True of any specialty business, but okay.
of them would list at the top, you know, the instructor. This is how many, you know, degrees of a black belt he is. He's a 5th Dan, he's a 6th Dan, you know, and you look at those and you go, wow, this guy's got a lot of experience. And then they would list the different styles.
There isn't any, like, national organization or international organization that officially grants belts, right? So anyone could theoretically just call themselves a black belt, right? There's no certification that's, like, official, is my understanding. Not in the US? Okay. Yeah, that seems weird. Benekagami says, this is a thing that bothered me even when I was a Christian. Despite their supposed focus on humility, the conservative Christians have one of the most self-centered and self-absorbed worldviews in the entire world. It's a belief that the creator of the universe molded the world to your specific tastes, and everything outside of that is evil. Also that he focuses on you over all the other suffering in the world and takes care of you.
Arts that they would teach. And almost all of them said, you know, self-defense, self-confidence, self-esteem. So it really, they lured you in. They knew what people were lacking.
What?
I look back now, you know, after my conversion, and I realize that all of those things that they offer can truly only be found in Jesus Christ.
Jesus is gonna teach me self-defense?
It can only be found in absolute faith.
Just hands me a whip. Trust me, this shit hurts like a motherfucker. Anyone starts coming at you, just whip them.
In the word of
whip them good.
God.
Bench.
But I wasn't there at that point. I'd walked away from church, walked away from God when I was 14 years old. I got tired. I said, you know, there's no power in this. I go to church every week. I'm hearing the same verses over and over again. But it didn't change my life. You know, I went to church and
good for her, profane priestess.
I heard sermons, but it didn't help me deal with the problems I was having with, you know, girls and with lust, or it didn't help me with the problems with, you know, the guys at school.
What problems with lust were you having? Did you consider masturbating? You could have masturbated.
That were threatening me, or, you know, the bullies. So in my mind, I thought, you know, church must be a good idea, but it's not helping me in my practical everyday life. I can do something else. So in a very subtle way, the enemy was moving me from one religion into another.
No, they weren't. You were a teenager that didn't feel like going to church. That's not a rare experience.
Began to look for those answers in martial arts that I wasn't finding in the church. And unfortunately, the answers were there. I mean, I felt like I was getting control. I wasn't afraid of the bullies anymore. I became very adamant. My mouth sometimes would get ahead of what my body was able to do, but there was a pride that was growing within me about the abilities that I was learning in the martial arts. I went to a couple of schools while I was there in Cleveland. The first one, when I was at college, was an Ishinryu school. I trained with them for 2.5 years while I was there in college. So I heard about
Did they make you become a skinhead?
A class that was held at the YMCA. My dad.
Ah, yes, the evil of the YMCA. I've heard much of it from the Village People song.
Dad told me, he said, Eric, try the YMCA. I thought, Dad, I mean, there's not going to be anything at the YMCA. I mean, that's like kid stuff. So I went to the...
Yeah, you're doing, like, low-level martial arts for teens. That's exactly what it is. Correct. Lennon Cat says, once again, the problem an evangelical is having is internal and not the result of external influences.
YMCA one night, and I walked into a class that's known as Burmese Bondo, or Bondo Boxing. And it's from Burma. They had a great influx
the former
of
Myanmar.
From the Chinese above and from the Okinawans and the Japanese. So it was like there was a mesh of these Oriental ideas when it came to combative arts. They believed very heavily in full contact. They did boxing, they did empty hand, and they did animal styles, although they were different animals than what I was used
We're not playing bingo, Harold Elbelman, but I would count it if we were.
to with the Kung Fu.
Wait, it's currently Myanmar, formerly Burma? God damn it, I always mix that up.
It was similar. It was very easy to adapt. I trained with them for 5 years before I made black belt in that style. And during that time, we went to a national kickboxing tournament.
If the They Might Be Giants wrote a song about it, I'd probably remember.
It was probably the biggest event that I'd ever been to personally. There were hundreds of people there, and I remember I was a nervous wreck, you know, because I'd never fought in front of that many people, and they've got spotlights on you, and it's just, you know, it was really nerve-wracking. But then when you get out there, and I remember stepping into the ring, and I was looking around at all these people that were around me, and they've got a card girl walking around.
Tronder says Okinawans and the Japanese, sarcastically. Okinawa, well, I believe now it is part of Japan. Historically, it was not. So I think that's probably why he's discussing it like that.
You know, in a bathing suit, holding up a number, and I'm thinking, is this real? And, you know, there was butterflies in my stomach. You know, how am I going to do? You know, all these people are watching. And then the other guy, my opponent, climbed in the ring on the other side. And when I looked at him and our eyes met, everything else was gone. It was like I didn't see anybody anymore. I didn't hear anything. The crowd was gone. All that mattered was the battle that was in front of me. And when I look back at that fight, it really changed me. And when I came back, I mean, there was a newspaper write-up about me and the other team members from our martial arts studio that had made, you know, the grade that had achieved, and pride was built a little bit more. After 5 years of hard training in the Burmese style of Bondo, I achieved black belt, and my instructors—
Look at how official that looks. They did it in Sharpie and everything.
Burmese style of Bondo.
American Bondo Association, Cleveland branch. They can't even get special certificates printed up for the Cleveland branch. Goddamn. By the authority vested in me by the American Bondo Association, I hereby promote Eric Wilson to the rank of black belt.
I achieved black belt, and my instructors encouraged me to begin teaching the art to others. But there was something missing, something of which I had not attained. And shortly thereafter, I decided to return to my first school.
Why are there kukuris on there? What does that mean?
Black belt.
Is that what the machete things are? Care to explain, Trey? What this is symbolic of? I have no idea. I'm failing at being a symbologist right now. Robert Langdon would be so disappointed.
And my instructors encouraged me to begin teaching the art to others. But there was something missing, something of which I had not—
Something to do with the Viet Cong?
Attained.
Confused.
And shortly thereafter, I decided to return to my first school, for I wanted to test my skills now in the place where I had begun. But little did I realize the spirit that was influencing my decision, nor the darkness into which this path I was on now led. During this time, I saw the fourth man in the history of our school achieve black belt. It was the first ceremony of this type I had ever before witnessed, an event which inspired me with awe. So when I came back to the art, you know, I started back where I was as a green belt, and within 6 months I'd made advanced green. You know, within another year and a half I'd made brown belt. And the instructor knew that I wanted to be able to teach. I wanted a black belt in this style. During that time, I got to see that advanced brown belt make black belt. And it was the first ceremony that I'd ever been to like that. Candles, and it was very intense. And I remember the instructor looking at me as this other man was being promoted. And I knew that's going to be me one day. I'm going to make black belt here. In 1999, I was the 5th person to make black belt in that school. 5th person in almost 30 years. And it took me 14 years of training to do that. You know, while I was training in these arts, most of that intense internal training came in the high rank class behind closed doors. When we trained in that class, there was an idea that was introduced to us. and that was the idea of something called chi. Now that term is thrown around even on sitcoms today. It's everywhere. It's in health magazines, it's in dentist offices. But back in the 80s and the 90s, this was not something that was thrown around to just everybody. And the way that it was described to us by our instructor was this chi is something that God put within man. It's internal strength. It's something that you have to learn to pull from within you and to focus it into your techniques, whether that be kicking a bag or punching somebody or being able to do 200 push-ups without stopping. You had to take this strength from within and draw it up and put it into whatever you were going to do. And
Fennikagami says he said it's a boxing art, so it's weird that Hukaris are on the certificate and it's a weapon of the Viet Cong, so why is that weapon on Burmese style? Other people pointed out that it's a weapon that's also used in other parts of the world and is used in martial arts in certain areas. So. And I'm not gonna freak out about it.
That I knew, this is what we need. This is the key to why those brown belts and those advanced brown belts and black belts can do the things that they do. And you know, we see nowadays, you know, in films, Hollywood films as well as documentaries, you see men breaking huge, you know, 500-pound blocks of ice or breaking solid timber, you know.
Do you think this is new to film? It is not. The concept of people doing incredible feats of strength using some sort of inner energy or will in order to accomplish incredible feats of strength or dexterity is not specific to modern day or even like modern day 90s. What are you talking about? Do you know anything about anything? Especially movies. That's just so wrong.
Boards, not these little pine boards with pencils, you know, inserted between them, but real things. So we asked about, you know, how do we learn this? And I can remember the instructor telling us, you know, as an advanced green belt, he said, this type of training is reserved for black belt. He said, I can show you pieces of it, how to get you ready for that, but you won't really learn about how to tap into the chi until after black. Well, one of the things that we did that helped us to bring this...
Is it pronounced chi or ki? I've heard both. I don't know.
This power up...
I have also heard both.
...from within us was...
In Dragon Ball, it's called Kai.
It was called Pain Class. And I remember the first night that we did this, the instructor had been warming us up to this idea as students for a couple of weeks. Well, we got there, and I would face off with my partner. You'd pick somebody that was equal rank as you. We started off with smacking each other in the face. And he would smack me, and I would smack him, and you'd start off with something like that, and it increased. Each smack was harder. So he'd smack me a little harder, and I'd...
Yeah, it's the name of one of the shows, but I also thought it was like part of the energy, was they had Kai.
Smack him a little...
It's been a while since I've seen it.
A little harder, and you're looking at each other, staring at each other right in the eyes, and it was harder and harder, and this went on for 5 minutes until you keep getting harder. And you could see the green belts that were nervous. They were taking it easy.
Do they call it ki? Okay. But they pronounce it chi?
On one another, and then you'd see the brown belts where they were, I mean, just hitting each other hard with an open palm. And they were feeding off of one another's aggression, almost like sharks. And so we would...
Yeah, it's a bunch of angry young men in a room hitting each other. That's gonna happen. Trey says, but he's talking about karate and kung fu that do not use the kirki. The kirki is not really a tool you can train kids with because even blunted, that'll fuck you up because it's a very forward heavy blade similar to axes. I don't know. And I don't think we're gonna get any more information on it.
Do the face, and then we would do the arms, and we would do the legs, and then we would bring out a board. And usually it was a 1-inch solid oak board or hickory board. And you would stand there and tense up your body and allow them to strike you in the stomach. And you had to channel your breathing. So when you're being hit, you breathe out and very intense. And our instructor told us that this was the first step in learning how to tap into that internal strength that was supposedly inside of us. Something that happened that night.
It's basically just pain tolerance training. It's not magic. You get hit a bunch, you're gonna learn to get hit. Like, I don't even know how healthy that is, but if that's your goal, I guess do it.
That really intrigued me, and I look back now and I understand it more than I did then. He did not allow us to fight after we did that class. And normally we always fought after higher rank class. There was no fighting allowed. And years later, I asked him about that, and he said, because you're too keyed up after going through that, you'd hurt each other. He said you wouldn't hold back. So that stuck in my mind. In the martial arts, there is a division between styles. Some styles are called internal, some styles are called external styles. The external styles are styles that focus on really developing the physical body, while the internal styles focus almost intensely on breathing and being able to tap into the chi, into this internal strength. Within those styles, the Japanese have a term, it's called Bushido. And all martial arts is based on that term, Bushido. It means the way of the warrior, or the warrior spirit. It's telling you, right off the bat, it's telling you, this is what we're training to become warriors. Only it's not warriors for God, it's warriors of the flesh. Within Christian circles, many times Christians will ask questions. What's wrong?
Yeah, he said all martial arts, even those that aren't Japanese. I don't know what the fuck he's talking about.
With learning how to defend oneself. Is there something wrong with our military? What about our military? What's wrong with them knowing how to defend our country? What about law enforcement? We have many people that contact our ministry and say, what about the police officers? What if they didn't learn how to fight? Where would we be? There's a distinct difference.
I'm sorry, are the police getting into martial arts fights regularly that I'm not aware of? What in the world?
Difference though between military training and defending the helpless than what is taught in martial arts. We've only seen military in our country since the 1950s being introduced into martial arts. Since the founding of this country, we've had warriors, we've had armies, and these armies never were trained in Eastern mystical combative techniques or spiritual.
It's not inherently mystical. You can literally just teach people to punch each other. I imagine these days, if anything, they probably teach like MMA, because I think that's considered like the actual. We figured out what martial arts the best, basically, through MMA. I forget what it is, but basically we figured out, hey, if you want to hurt people with your body, this is the best way to do it. So I kind of feel like the military's teaching hand-to-hand combat. They're probably basing it off of, like, that stuff. And not any specific one, like, thing.
Only since the 1950s, after World War II, was the martial arts brought back with our soldiers. Many of them, when they were stationed...
Fenekagami says, the confusion over chi and ki is multi-layered. They're actually different things, but in practice, they're basically the same because they come from the same source in history. China and Japan kept invading each other and trading and adapting each other's concepts. For example, ninja originated in China, but got adopted by Japan after fighting back an invasion from China.
In the war in Okinawa.
Not today, Trey. Thank you, though.
They picked up the idea of the martial arts. They saw men that, traditionally are smaller in stature, smaller in build. They saw these little Oriental men able to do...
I'm saying that!
Seemingly impossible or superhuman feats of strength and speed. So when they saw this and they brought it back with them, we started seeing an influx of Asian masters. And first it was the Japanese and the Okinawans teaching judo and jiu-jitsu. And then it began to develop farther. In the 60s, we started getting more of the Eastern mysticism with yoga and the hippie movement.
Yoga? Oh, God! Lennon Cat says, when I was in the Navy, we were able to take martial arts training with the Marines. I didn't because I didn't want to get hit by a Marine. It's called MCMAP, pronounced MICMAP. Thank you.
Along that timeline,
Marine Corps martial arts program.
While these arts, these mystical ideas and philosophies are being brought into our country, the media is picking up and running rampant with it. We're seeing martial arts movies. I remember, Bruce Lee, Enter the Dragon. That was like the greatest martial arts movie that anyone had ever seen.
Have you seen Ip Man? It's Chinese propaganda, but it's pretty good.
We had the Green Hornet. We had David Carradine with Kung Fu. And as we progressed,
Bear in mind when I say that, it's not a harsh criticism. It's Chinese propaganda in the same way Transformers is like American military propaganda. It's still very entertaining and fun.
Progressed through the 70s.
Remember that time Ip Man defeated Nazis with only Kung Fu? And this definitely really happened.
In the 80s, we had Chuck Norris movies. So these heroes were being put before the minds of our families and our children's. Even traditional fundamental Christian...
Don't make fun of Mr. Miyagi. Karate Kid is still one of the greatest, like, 80s movies. Genuinely incredible. Karate Kid 2 is a pretty darn good sequel, too. 3's not good. Don't even watch next Karate Kid. Sorry, Hilary Swank. Not your fault. But oh boy, bad movie.
Christianity was now looking at what was once considered esoteric and occult power as, is this physical? Is this a physical thing that we've just not learned how to tap into yet? So with those movies, I mean, I was intrigued. I mean, because we could do these things in real life, we always went to the movies to see, you know, how they were portraying, you know, the arts we were practicing. There was one man in particular that really set the stage for modern day martial arts. His name was Gichin Funakoshi. This man was one of the founders and fathers of modern day karate.
I actually don't think the Jaden Smith one is that bad. And it's certainly not as good as the originals, but it's better than Next Karate Kid.
I remember seeing...
Part of that's the fact that I really like Jackie Chan. I know he's not like a good person personally, but I really like his performances, and he's always entertaining to watch do his stunt work.
His quote in books.
Sorry, Jackie Chan's my shitty person that I know's shitty, but I'm still gonna engage with their media. That's my one. That's my one. It's Jackie Chan.
On dojo walls, and oftentimes when parents take their students, little Johnny and Susie, in to sign up for karate.
Why isn't Jackie Chan a good person personally? His daughter's a lesbian, and he's not cool with that.
This quote is the one that wins them. Funakoshi said something. He said, martial arts is not about winning or losing. It's not about competing and defeating your enemy. It's about the perfection of the character of its participants.
Ashley One-Up says, I always think the Next Karate Kid would have worked a little better if it was Daniel instead of Mr. Miyagi teaching the girl, him passing the lessons Miyagi taught him onto the Next Karate Kid. I would recommend you watch Cobra Kai. Watch Cobra Kai.
And when you hear that, it makes you feel, wow, that's what I want for my children. I want to perfect their character. I want them to be self-motivated, self-disciplined, self-controlled. I want them to have self-esteem, as I do for my children. What they don't realize, and what most of the instructors won't show you, is the cover of his book, his master's textbook on the martial arts. And when you see the cover of that book and the image that is on there...
The statue of someone in a flexing punchy pose? Is he gonna say it's a demon, even though it's not a demon? Or even if it is, it's a statue? Fenigami says, Bushido is a code of conduct like the Knight's Code of Chivalry. It is not a focus of martial arts any more than general culture would be. I mean, ninjutsu was created to be a peasant style because samurai are noble, read, assholes, but often let peasants fend for themselves. In fact, ninja oriented their style specifically to kill samurai, as ninja often got hired to assassinate them. Based.
You begin to realize the character that is actually being developed in the martial arts, the war character. A few years ago, when I was looking at that image, I thought, where did this come from?
I think most martial arts have a general philosophy behind them on some level, if not heavily focused on, that says like, hey, don't use this to be aggressive towards people. By all means, protect yourself. Protect others if others are aggressive towards them. But do not use your ability to punch and kick people hard to harm people. That's pretty built in to every single martial art thing I've ever seen, is a philosophy of not starting fights, ending them if you need to help and protect yourself or other people, but not being proactively aggressive.
And you don't just pick an image that looks blatantly demonic, an image of rage and...
Blatantly demonic. Everything that makes me personally uncomfortable is not only demonic, but it is blatantly demonic, and if you don't see what I see, you're in the wrong.
Power for no reason. And as I researched, I found that image. It was an image of one of the 12 Asian zodiac gods. So it was this image that was being portrayed through the punching, the kicking, the fighting, continually training in the art of war. Martial arts means the art of war, martial art. So is this the character that we want to develop in our children and in our own lives? I remember as I was training, when I was growing close to making black belt, a first dan in Kung Fu, or black sash, as the Chinese would say. I was fighting with my greatest competitor. He was another advanced brown belt. And that rank took the longest. It was over 2.5 years to go from advanced brown to black belt. And we fought every single week. This guy outweighed me by close to 120 pounds. And through the training, we had learned how to push through, no matter what the obstacle was. When the
Amber says, it's really wild to me that the vast segments of American Christianity as a subculture have just decided they don't believe in multiculturalism or cultural exchange. I was always taught that America's greatest strength was our rich cultural heritage. I was taught that we're a nation of immigrants. Time was a lot of the right would have agreed with me in concept, if not in practice, because these were considered fundamental American ideals after World War II. Sad that time has passed. Well, I think on some level, certain leaders of evangelical Christianity recognized they were losing people to the recognition that, oh my God, our worldview is very self-centered and our worldview is very insular, and people are seeing outside of that, and the more they do that, they see that we're wrong. So I think they kind of locked it down. I think that's one of the reasons, is because they're like, nope, we can't even have you thinking about these other things as anything other than demonic. Because if you do, you're going to start thinking about your own beliefs. And they don't want that.
The day came, and I was fighting this opponent, this other advanced brown belt.
I guess what I'm trying to say is, to understand and accept multiculturalism, fundamentally on some level, you have to recognize the subjective human experience and how many of our beliefs are not necessarily based on objective reality, but often based on cultural truisms that we're taught from very young that we never think about. And as you're exposed to people with different points of view from different cultures, it causes you, I think in a positive way, to think about the things you take for granted and opens your worldview. I consider that a good thing. Other people don't, if they're in a very insular, myopic culture. Puka, thanks for 500 bits. Thank you very much.
I remember the instructor stopping the fight. It was in the afternoon, and looking at me, and he said, that's good enough. My instructor pulled me to the side and he gave me a date. He said, how does May sound? And I knew what he was talking about. And he just smiled, and for the next few weeks he didn't even bring it up. When that day came, I drove up to the school, with my wife and children. There was going to be all these alumni of the school, older high ranks, brown belts, advanced brown belts, and green belts that had been there from years before, coming to support and to be a part of the ceremony. When we got—
Oh, by the way, chat, I was going to do a patron-only live show tonight, but I can't. So the patron-only live shows, which also are going to include YouTube members from now on, so if you have a membership on YouTube, you can be involved too. This Wednesday and this Sunday, we're going to do patron-only and member-only streams. So if you want, you can become a member on YouTube or join the Patreon at patreon.com/HannahReloaded, and you can be a part of those streams. On top of that, make sure you vote in this poll, because this is the last day of the poll for my new costume. So make sure you vote. I think right now Lady Spock is winning. Toreador says, could it be Satan?
Out of the car, my instructor, my Sifu, he had one of the high ranks come and take my wife and children and lead them into the school. And he took me separately to a separate room outside of the school. And he sat me down and he told me, he said, Eric, he said, I want to tell you something. He said, you may not understand this now, but you will one day. He said, what's about to happen to you, what you are about to participate in, is more like a marriage than a promotion. And then he walked out of the room and he left me there to think. As I came into the school, an hour or so later after the ceremony was all set up, there was a path of candles, and the instructor would walk in.
My friend, it's a celebration of your accomplishments in this sport. They're just celebrating with you. It's fine. It's not evil.
And then the higher ranks, the brown belts and advanced brown belts. And then each one of the green belts would walk in, and the brown belts carrying a candle, setting it down, setting, as it were, a path of fire that you walk through to achieve this moment. When I came in after and walked down that path, I came in front, and the school was full. There were hundreds of people there.
The music is pretty ominous. That it is.
And I sat down.
Makes me sad that he has to look back on this moment in his life that he worked so hard for and see it as sinister. Like, I'm not into martial arts in this way. I like watching it in entertainment. But, like, I'm not a sports person, but I can respect that someone took years of their life to train their body and train, like, their muscle memory and their skills in order to be seen, to be recognized for that achievement. You should be able to look at that and go, wow, look what I accomplished. Isn't that nice? But instead he has to do this. Sad.
In front with my instructor, you know, in a lotus position with the crossed legs. And he sat down there in front of me, and I sat down. And he gave a speech. You know, he told about, you know, the achievements and the difficulties that I'd overcome. As he was doing this, I looked, and there was the traditional Asian teapot for the tea ceremony. There was also 2 candles there. And he told me, he said, when we do this ceremony, he said, you reach up and you put the candle out with your finger. And afterward, we did the tea ceremony. The tea ceremony was 1 teapot, him pouring and me pouring, and then us both drinking from the
familiar with the tea ceremony, sir.
Same water. And that was very symbolic. What it meant was that his teachings were now my teachings. His life was now my life. His spirit.
Don't poke the microphone. Toreador says ominous mollusk.
Was now my spirit. It made us and joined us as one. After the
right, it's symbolic of the teaching that he has helped impart to you, correct? It's not evil, it's not ominous. Again, this is a symbol of your achievement, and you're talking about it like it's evil.
Ceremony, we had a dinner. And I remember at the dinner, I mean, there was all these people, all these family members and students there. And I was so used to, from my upbringing, helping other people. So I started to go over and help the high ranks, the green belts, to serve people. And I remember the Grand Master came over to me and he touched me on the shoulder and he pulled me to the side and he said, you're not part of that group anymore. You're not supposed to be serving. He said, come up here and sit.
I mean, yeah, it's also your party, man. Like, if I was at someone's birthday party or anniversary and they started trying to serve people, I'd be like, no, go sit down. This is your day. Stop it. What doesn't he understand? This is basically a celebration of your accomplishment. What do you not understand about what you have taken part in?
So I went up to the...
It's funny that he's, like, pretty clearly showing this, and even the, like, reproduction shows it's just a bunch of white people in, like, in, like, you know, a rec center having lunch, but he's acting like it's this demonic thing. Clyde, thank you for your continued membership on YouTube. How you doing? Toreador says, after I walked across the stage in my long black robes, they handed me a scroll and a graven plate stating my achievements and sacrifice.
Table and sat down with the other black belts, and the Grand Master sat beside me, and he said, you are to be served. And all these green belts began to bring the food to us.
Again, it's a recognition of your achievement that day. I don't think he's saying you can never be nice to anyone ever again.
And at that point, it was like the Lord sent up a red flag. Something's not right about this. This is exactly opposite from what God's word says.
Oh my god, I hate to do this, but I think this guy's legitimately just, like, really oblivious and doesn't understand what's happening around him. Like, how could you listen to any of this and take it as evil? It's a party, because you got your black belt, silly! It's not satanic, they're being nice to you.
In Matthew chapter 20, Jesus tells us You know that the princes of the Gentiles and the unbelievers exercise authority and dominion over them, and they that are great or powerful exercise authority upon those that are weak. But it shall not be so among you.
And that's why Christianity and evangelical Christianity never involves itself in hierarchy, ever.
For whosoever...
Come on, man! Have you been to church?
...will be great among you shall be your servant. And whosoever shall be chief among you, let him be your minister. These thoughts were racing through my mind. You know, why am I now being served when I should be the one that is serving?
Hey, fun fact, if everyone tries to serve, there's no one to be served. This party was specifically for you. So accept it, douchebag. Tori says, after I took a bite of the dessert, the Lord just clicked something inside of me. I knew it was something wrong. They'd served devil's food cake. Dun, dun, dun.
And at the same time, that spirit of pride that had been growing for 14 years within me liked the position of being served, liked the attention. I was now beginning to realize that martial arts is not just about fighting and self-defense, but it's...
It took you 14 years to learn that the sport you were doing was more than just self-defense? Yeah, there's an ethos. There is an ethos. There's a general culture surrounding it. Yeah, it's not evil, though.
It's Budo. It's a way of life. The term Budo literally means the martial way.
Oh, God.
Every style, you know, especially those in the Okinawan styles, the Japanese styles, the do, whether it be Jeet Kune Do or Karate Do or Judo or Aikido, means the way. After that ceremony, I went to the school the following week, and I was taking private instruction at that time because I really wanted to make sure that I could achieve and progress in the arts. And my instructor came up to me and he asked me a very pointed question, and I noticed that something had changed between he and I from that ceremony.
Yeah, because you're a black belt now. I would imagine your teacher now expects you to move forward and teach these things to others. Like, your training, I'm sure you continue to learn more, but the period of you being perceived as simply a student within this dojo is over. Like, did he even know what he was doing? I'm so confused how he could be involved in this for 14 years, but so fundamentally not understand what he was doing outside of kicking and punching.
Now, instead of him looking down at me, it was as though a wall had been taken down that kept the student away from the master.
Yes!
And he asked me a question. He said, Eric, he said, what is it that you want from the martial arts now? Now that you've achieved black belt, you know, where do you want to go? And I told him very plainly, I said, I want what you have. I want the abilities that you have, the things that I had seen him for those 14 years do that seemed magical. My instructor encouraged me to begin training in other arts. My primary focus had been on full contact and on the animal styles.
Toriador says, after I got my eagle and palms, I still served the community by leading and teaching within my troop till I aged out. I imagine he's going to be a teacher now, exactly what you just said.
Began to encourage me to train in other arts, in Aikido, in Judo, in the Okinawan styles. In most martial arts styles, a black belt or a first degree or a first dan is considered a beginning disciple. It's a follower of the way, a follower of the art. Again, not just the physical techniques, but the way of life. So you begin to follow the master, whoever that instructor is, whatever his rank is.
That's how teaching works.
So as I did this, I wanted to be officially a disciple. I wanted the title of a disciple. And my instructor had told me that to achieve that, the training and the focus of training had to begin to be purely on chi, on the internal strength. So all of my focus, all of my attention began to be in any art that I was training in, how is this art related to chi? How can I use this art to achieve these supernatural abilities?
There's no such thing as supernatural abilities. Like, chi isn't literally real. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure there's plenty of people that believe it is. It's not, though, but it is a helpful construct, a symbol to kind of picture and imagine your willpower as a thing that you have a certain amount of and building it up. It's not literally true, but it is symbolically true in that it can be used as a construct to help you focus on your willpower, how much of it you have, and how you can exert it. It's not that it's literally true, it's a metaphor, sort of. Andronicus Khan says, the way this man's telling the story, I keep expecting him to be like, and then we cut open one of the green belts and drained him of his life essence over a pentagram, but it's just a completely regular celebration. And Toreador says, as a furry, yep, that sounds familiar.
Shaolin Temple says in their own writings that the relationship between a master and his disciple is stronger than that of blood. So through this practice, and with me it was 5-6 days a week. I went to church once a week. The rest of the time I was training martial arts. Whenever I was out with my friends, it was about martial arts.
You chose to do that.
Martial arts focused.
If you think that's bad, why did you do that? You're the one who spent like a decade and a half of your life training in martial arts.
As I was being drawn deeper into the martial arts.
And also, most churches aren't like doing services every day of the week. At best, you'll get one that does a Sunday and a Wednesday. Maybe you'll get one that does a Saturday, Sunday, and a Wednesday. But how much of that's even your fault?
I was being pulled slowly away from the bonds of my family. I can remember when it would be my anniversary, my wedding anniversary, and I would tell my wife, let's do it the next day because
oh, so you're just shitty and you're gonna blame the martial arts instead of your priorities. That's not the martial arts' fault. You're just shitty. Fennikagami says, isn't it wonderful how despite how blood and soil and legacy obsessed evangelicals tend to be, here he is making a basic display of how heritage works sound evil?
I've got something really important in the arts that have to be done that night.
Again, that's on you. Also, that's a bad wig.
So we would postpone things with my wife and children in order that I could put the martial arts first. I remember one weekend, my wife and I were sitting there talking, and she told me that she'd had a dream. And I've never really, given much credit to dreams. I mean, they're just dreams. My wife was very concerned about this. She said, Eric, she said, this was from the Lord. She said, I saw the high ranks at your school. And she said they were all standing in a circle with their arms linked one to another. And she said behind them, on the outside of the circle, I saw the wives and the mothers and the children. And it was as though the circle was growing tighter and the families were being pushed to the outside.
Yeah, I don't think God sent you that dream. I think that's your subconscious. That's like a clear-cut metaphor for you feel like your husband is pushing you out in favor of his friends at the martial arts club. Yeah, that's just a dream. That's a metaphor about your anxieties.
My wife shared with me this dream, and I could tell that it bothered her, tremendously. I became angry, and I didn't realize it then, but I do now. There was a division of loyalties. I felt like,
wow, he's legit an idiot. Like she was like as clear as you can be through metaphor, through symbolism, that, hey, I feel distant from you. And he's like, I don't get it. Sir, the problem wasn't the martial arts. The problem is you're a terrible husband.
She was trying to pull me away from this thing that had meant so much to me, this art that had filled my life. And I became angry. I thought she doesn't understand. I began training even harder, determined not to allow anything to stand between me and the dreams of my youth. But it was I who did not understand, for I had allowed my own selfish desires to come between my wife and I. If only I had listened in faith and obeyed the word of the Lord, that life-giving word which is still speaking to each of us today.
He's gonna get, let me guess, is he gonna get an injury?
Son Give me thine heart, and let thine eyes observe my ways. Husbands, love your wives, even as Christ also loved his church and gave himself for her. This is the battle that faces every man, to love his wife, his children, and to love all others above himself. In frustration and rebellion, I turned away from the one that was calling for my heart, not realizing that it is only through this surrender that victory and freedom are finally won. The night which I longed for finally came. 2 of us were to be recognized and awarded the title of disciples in Kung Fu. It was a private ceremony, one which only the high ranks were permitted to attend. And now, after training and teaching for 17 years in the martial arts, myself and the man whom I had first seen awarded the coveted black belt were now being honored with the rank equivalent of a 5th Dan. I remember the Grand Master.
Overthought says, and after all of this, he's like, I'm really like Job, huh? Thanks, Jesus.
Master, when he walked in to the discipleship ceremony, myself and that gentleman that had made advanced brown belt that I'd fought in the beginning, both of us made disciple the same night. We were the first ones in over 30 years to make that rank. It was the equivalent of a 5th degree, a 5th Dan. When the Grand Master walked in, he had this huge staff in his hand, and there was hair, horse hair, coming out of it, and there were carvings on the side of it. And after the ceremony, when everyone was gone, we asked him about that. Where did that come from? I'd been there for all these years and never seen that even in display.
I'd had it at home. Does it matter? Benikagami says, wow, a shitty evangelical was told something he was doing was a problem, and instead of introspection, he chose to double down. I'm shocked.
And he told me, he said that staff was used only when someone made a disciple. And I know now that that was a shaman's staff. Even though this man loved the Lord, was a professed Christian, he was blending light and darkness together.
The ceremonial stick, dude. It's fine.
After that point, we had a private lesson with him that week after that ceremony. And the Grand Master told us something that I'll never forget. He looked at me and the other gentleman there, and he told us, he said, what you all are learning to do now.
Where's the darkness? Shamanism! Even though no one used the word shaman, he saw a stick and he was like, that's a shaman. That's a shaman right there. This is shamanism.
You would be considered wizards if this was done 100 years ago.
Hey, guess what? It wasn't done 100 years ago. Wizards aren't real.
For the last 2.5 years, myself and the other disciple had trained in ways I could have never before imagined. We spent hours each day meditating, standing in a low horse stance upon balance beams and Shaolin plumflower poles, striving to tap into and harness this mystical power called Qi. Through meditation, deep breathing, and visualization techniques, we were taught to change the temperature of our bodies, and through the power of our minds to influence and control both our environment as well as those with whom we fought. To advance in this training, I was required to compromise the very clear instructions of the Word of God, and with each further step I took on this path of disobedience, my heart grew harder and my ears more deaf to the voice of my Father's love. God's Word being removed, the foundation of my life began to crumble beneath me, and our family and home was being swept away in the storm.
It's literally just because you're ignoring your family for the activity you're in. It's not the fault of, like, this could be the same thing if he joined, like, an art class he was obsessed with and ignored his family. That doesn't make art evil. You're the problem. You are inattentive as a husband and father. This is a you problem. This has nothing to do with the particular activity you used to ignore your family. What? Or church, yeah, he could be doing the same thing with church. It doesn't matter what the thing is.
The ties which had bound me to my Savior and the covenant with my wife slowly had been eroded away. During this time, after I'd made my discipleship, my marriage and my family began to become very shaky. And I was battling with something inside that I couldn't voice to others. Everything that I was going through with this fight of staying married, of fighting for my wife.
Bittergrin says, was I a dick? No, clearly it was the devil.
Fighting for my children. And then the martial arts pulling me the other direction. This was harder than any battle that I'd ever faced before. And nothing that the martial arts had taught me gave any hope of freedom or victory in this fight against sin. In the martial arts, they told us that everything was okay in moderation. There were no absolutes. There was no
You're not doing this in moderation. You're ignoring your family. How are you saying this and not understanding what the problem is?
Absolute black and white. Everything had a relative gray. The Word of God tells us clearly that no man can serve two masters. And for more than 16 years I had attempted to do just that. While attending church each week with my family, my heart had been slowly drawn away from the things of the Lord and my home. I had allowed the martial arts and the desires of my own carnal heart to come between my wife and I, and the covenant which I had made to her and to my God. This was perhaps the greatest battle I had ever faced. Through the years of my training in the arts and full contact fighting, I thought I had prepared myself to face any conflict, but now I realized that none of the...
Stop it, hey. Sorry, she was eating something on the floor.
Master's teachings, nor the training of the flesh had prepared me for this. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood,
but against principalities.
Against principalities and powers, against spiritual wickedness in the heavens.
Dude, this is literally, it's just your own priorities. You're not fighting some secret spiritual war. Literally just have a fucking date night with your wife, douchebag.
Against the rulers of the darkness of this world. Not only in the church, but in our homes, and even within our own lives does this battle wage. The enemy I was now facing was within my own heart and mind, and I knew not how to free myself from my own selfish desires and the flesh, nor from the voices I had listened to and obeyed for so many years, voices which speak to each of us every day, through television and movies, through music and the printed page, and the voices which had spoken to me through the grandmasters and teachers of the arts which I practiced. The Lord promises us that the weapons of our warfare are not weak and carnal, but they are mighty and full of power through God, to the pulling down of strongholds, the stronghold of lies which the devil whispers in our ears, casting down imaginations and every high thing which exalts itself against the knowing of God, and bringing into captivity every thought to the perfect obedience of Christ. But how few avail themselves of that victory which the Lord Jesus Christ is waiting and ready to freely give. To be a genuine Christian, truly a disciple and follower of the Lord, means more than just believing in Jesus. It means more than just attending church once a week and reading a few verses in the morning before you rush out into the world. The Lord, Jehovah, Yahweh, is not asking for 70% of your life. To be truly born again costs everything. It will cost you your life. The martial arts had taught me to look inward to myself rather than upward to Christ, to follow my feelings rather than the instructions of God's holy word. And now there was a war taking place, a war which began more than 6,000 years ago in heaven. And although
I didn't have bad priorities, I wasn't a bad person, I got caught up in a 6,000-year-old war. Does that help? Does that belief help you? Does it?
Unseen to the common eye, this war rages with intensity within every man, woman, and child. For there are people struggling in darkness, battling with internal foes, all around us each and every day. There are souls that are starving for the bread and the water of life,
I think that guy was just starving for bread and water.
Waiting, longing for someone who truly believes the words of Christ.
No, I don't think he's a Jehovah's Witness. He was just using it amongst other names. In fact, I know he's not a Jehovah's Witness because he listed Jehovah alongside Yahweh. Jehovah's Witnesses only recognize Jehovah as the true name of God. They don't like when people use other names.
And who knows
kind of like a big part of their thing.
His love and great power to deliver and to save. Now, when I needed the Lord the most, when I needed clear discernment, and to know and to hear His voice, I had become both blind and deaf to His Spirit's instruction. Although I wanted a solution to the problems in our marriage, I could no longer read and understand the Scriptures as I once had.
You don't need to read the Bible to fix your marriage. Just fucking get your priorities straight, man.
Light had become darkness to me, and evil now appeared as good. For the Bible says spiritual things can only be spiritually
I like that he also
discerned.
left the martial arts, but then clearly I assume he just has a very addictive, all-in personality, and he switched from martial arts immediately into this shit of being, like, an absolutely batshit evangelical who makes up stuff in order to get attention. Like, he's still doing the same thing. It's just instead of punching and learning to deal with pain, it's this, but it's the same thing, effectively.
I had spent so many years listening to, reading, and hearing the voice of the serpent through the martial arts, my instructors, and the media, that I could no longer discern the voice of my Father in heaven as He spoke through His holy word. For the carnal mind and the flesh is enmity against God. It is not subject to the law of God, neither indeed can be. I fought the battle going on in my mind for almost 6 months, but I fought it only as I had been taught in the arts, by the power of my own will and flesh. And regardless of the training, no man is a match for Satan and his legions of fallen angels without Christ.
Oh, it's a divorce paperwork. So your wife almost divorced you, so you quit martial arts? Okay. Benikagami says, hey, who wants to bet that if someone asked him to display those powers, he totally learned, guys, that he would either say that God took the evil powers from him, or he'd refuse to use them because God would be mad if he used chakra. I mean ki, I mean chi, I mean haki. No, wait, chi was the fake power we're talking about.
In frustration, I yielded to the voice of the dragon and my own selfish desires for freedom, and I filed for a divorce.
Wait, he filed for a divorce? I'm kind of doubting that. He was spending too much time doing martial arts. I don't think he had time to get down to the courthouse to get the paperwork. I feel like this is very much a his wife left him, but he's like, no, I filed for divorce.
I cannot put into words how our family was broken. When yielding to the carnal desires of one's own heart, rather than the Word of God, few realize the lives their decisions will affect for eternity. For the heart is deceitful above all things.
So is this whole video just a cope from him to be like, oh no, I'm not a huge big piece of shit. It was the martial arts that did it, not me. Sent this to his estranged kids on a VHS and they just threw it in the garbage.
Things. And who can know it?
By filed for divorce, he means he signed the papers when they were sent to him. That's the vibe I get.
I remember so clearly that last day when I drove the moving truck to our country home to pick up the remaining furniture that I was taking with me. And as I pulled out of our gravel driveway, I did not see my wife and small son as they stood in the doorway, crying out to the Lord in heaven for His mercy and help. Nor did I see the 6-year-old little girl running behind my truck crying, Daddy, Daddy, wait, please don't leave.
How does he think this does anything but make him look like a dick?
It wasn't until
And it's not the fault of the martial arts.
years later that I realized what my leaving had done to my wife and children's lives. My wife Sarah began to fight the fight of faith, refusing to believe that the Lord would not keep His word. She daily claimed His promises, repeating out loud, what the Lord hath joined together, let no man put asunder. For with
so your wife's also a whack job. Great. Ex-wife, sorry.
With our heart we believe unto righteousness, and with our mouth confession is made unto salvation. For whosoever believeth on him shall not be put to shame. And while my wife lost herself in the Lord, in her Bible and fasting and prayer, I plunged even deeper into the darkness of the arts, which had been the
Sounds like you both handled it poorly.
dream of my youth, struggling to silence the voice of the Lord and my own guilty conscience. I can remember seeing Sarah as she walked up the steps to my apartment to drop off our children. She looked so thin and fragile, and yet there was a joy in her eyes which I could not understand. She had found that for which I struggled so hard to apprehend. But no matter how far I ran, and regardless of the entertainment and distractions the devil used to occupy my time, when I lay down alone at night, the silence was deafening. Oh, that thou hadst hearkened unto my commandments, for then had thy peace been as a river, and thy righteousness as the waves of the sea. For great peace have they that love my law, and nothing shall cause them to stumble and fall. As I sought for deeper knowledge and power from the martial arts, I also began training more heavily in the Chinese internal styles of Tai Chi Quan, Bagua Zhang, and Qigong. I remember the weekend when an accomplished martial artist and close friend of mine invited me to attend a training seminar which his Grand Master was holding in a city but a few hours from where we lived. I was excited about the prospect of meeting this man, a man of his rank and reputation, and even more so because he was known for his ability in both demonstrating and teaching the use of internal strength, or Qi. This man was recognized as a 10th Dan in 2 systems of Kung Fu, and a master teacher in Chinese Qigong, a system which has as its sole purpose the martial and medical development of Qi power and energy. After the day's training was over, the Grand Master came and spoke with a small group of students from the area. He gave instructions to the black belts and their pupils in regard to their training, which they quickly left to complete. Once alone, the Grand Master addressed me personally, and although we had never met before, he told me that it was not by chance that I was there that day. For according to an old Chinese proverb, when the student is ready, it is then that the master will appear. From that day forward, I looked for every opportunity to train under this man. For not only did he have the...
I feel like at the age he was at, like, why is he in this constant state of being a student? He's trained in multiple martial arts and has black belts and above. At this point, why is he not in the role of teacher? I'm so confused what his trajectory is. He's still looking for teachers and he's like 30 or 40? Like, I feel like this is the part where he should be, you know, working at a dojo or starting his own and, like, teaching kids and, you know, I don't understand this. What is he doing?
Knowledge to teach me, but he also had the authority to ensure my progress in the ranks above 5th Dan. Of all that I learned during those years, one thing stands out in my memory to this very day. Late one night, after a hard day of training, he began to speak of the riddle of internal energy and Qi, and how this power was achieved. But to my surprise, instead of telling of ancient Chinese warriors and sages, he spoke of the artistic ability of many of today's modern musicians.
Oh, okay, this part's gonna actually be made up. Is gonna be like, he revealed to me, we all worship Satan! Fennikagami says, okay, I'm bored. Can we go to the part where he's born again? I get he feels that this is building up to the victory of God or whatever, but he's just putting me to sleep. We're almost there. This is almost done. There's like 10, 12 minutes left. There is a sequel, though. He did do a whole part 2.
Clapton, Hendrix, and others. He compared the energy which we were taught to use in Kung Fu to that which these legends of rock and roll channeled while playing the most sensual and ungodly music.
The most sensual and ungodly music plays the Star-Spangled Banner. Bow, down, 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 down. That whammy bar, though. I've never been so horny for the national anthem.
It was then that I was told that to the beginner, chi is known simply as internal strength, while at the intermediate levels, chi is taught to be breath, and at the final level, chi is revealed to be spirit.
After this, could we watch the other guy who bought into the woo and chi powers flinging people around? That guy's a scammer. That guy, I don't know.
And it is this spirit.
Because he's not like a conspiracy theorist, he's an outright scammer. Although I do find the bullshido stuff interesting.
Spiritual energy which is manifest in 1,000 different forms.
Hey,
to the martial
Twilight.
artist, it is used for speed and power. To the holistic healer, it is used to channel vibrational energies to heal. For the corporate executive and leader, it is used to influence and manipulate those beneath him. To the actor, it is used to mesmerize their audiences. While for the musician, this spiritual energy is used to inspire and to quicken their performance and control the minds and emotions of their listeners.
Profane Priestess says, okay, but the rendition of the national anthem is great. He played it to sound like a plane crashes as an anti-war protest. It sounds good.
After a few years under his instruction, I was soon impressed that if I was truly going to learn what this man had to teach, I could no longer serve two masters. After all, it was common for disciples to step out from under the covering of their original teacher in school and begin teaching on their own, and this I did. Now, feeling freedom to learn unhindered by divided loyalties, I began seeking to understand the hidden thread which is woven throughout all the Eastern arts, a power whose results could be seen, but whose source remained ever elusive and concealed beneath a veil. I often made the long 6-hour drive to the city where my new teacher lived and taught.
Sorry, it's just really frustrating listening to this guy describe how he, like, got obsessed with something and acting like it's the thing's fault instead of his personality. Benekagami says, so they're monks who challenged their key points into their bard powers. Didn't know you could do that, but whatever. I'm not up on modern D&D. I'm still working through Baldur's Gate 3.
And it was
I assume that was supposed to be channeled.
On one such visit that I went to the Grandmaster's home. It was here that I learned the secret for which I and disciples around the world had fought and trained for so many years. As I entered his home, I saw that which was most unexpected. Instead of images of Shaolin warlords long dead and monks in their traditional robes and sashes, I saw hanging upon the walls of every room tall, life-size tapestries of the Hindu gods and deities.
Okay.
Alarms were sounding in my mind.
Oh no, a religion other than my own! What the fuck is wrong with you, man? It's it's like the oldest religion in the world! And you're acting like it's fucking demonic. It literally predates your religion. Fuck off.
Echoes of the scripture warnings I had been taught as a child. Echoes which I sought to ignore. The Grandmaster asked me that day a very puzzling question. He said, if all martial arts begin at Shaolin, which I knew they did.
What does Hinduism have to do with martial arts? I mean, I don't know. The guy might have just been Hindu. The guy might have just, like, believed in Hinduism. It's not necessarily related. He just had all this stuff at his house, and this guy freaked out about it.
Then why do we see such different
He
expressions?
also might just like the aesthetic, which is a little problematic, but whatever. I'd rather he be into the aesthetic without connecting spiritual significance to it than being a weirdo who thinks it's evil.
Of that one and same art. I was stunned and yet intrigued, for this was that very question for which I had sought an answer all of these years, yet had never been able to put into words. How did he know to ask me that question? The alarms rang louder in my mind. The year was 2007. I had achieved everything that I'd ever dreamed of in the martial arts. One night I was teaching a class in a Chinese style called Baguazhang. It's very much like Tai Chi. All the movements are very slow, very precise. There's a lot of deep breathing, internal meditation, focusing within as you do the movements of the form. As I was doing this form, I was leading my students through the motions in a circle. And as we circled, we would focus on breathing and certain hand gestures called mudras. Then, as we completed the circle, we would reverse and go the opposite way. As I was doing this, I looked into the eyes of my students. I was looking to see if they were really tapping into that power that the martial arts is supposed to reveal, is supposed to impart to you. As I looked in their eyes,
I think America the Beautiful would be a better as our anthem. I think America Fuck Yeah would be a better national anthem.
Noticed that almost every...
Or Hulk Hogan's theme song. Hulk Hogan sucks, but that song rules. I am a real American. Fight for the rights of every man.
One of them.
Fight for your rights. Fight for your life.
Was in a trance, and they were drenched in sweat. Now, because of the martial arts training, I knew that this is not possible.
Ooh, Highway to the Danger Zone is also good.
Humanly.
Nothing to do with America, but it just would be a badass national anthem. For every sports game, you gotta listen to Danger Zone. Highway to the Danger Zone.
Or physically speaking, we had not done anything to bring the body to a sweat. We had not done anything physical. There was no calisthenics. At that moment, my mind was taken above what we were doing. And as I was teaching this form, it was as though I was looking down from above and I was seeing a design or a pattern that we were forming on the floor of the dojo. This had never happened to me before.
You disassociated super hard?
It was very much like a farmer with crop circles. When he walks out into his field, he just sees a mess. But if he sees it from above, from an aerial view, you can see a distinct pattern. The pattern that I saw was a circle with a dot right in the center, much like a bullseye. The thing that I struggled with was that I had seen this same symbol in all of the martial arts literature, the writings, the books of the masters and grandmasters. I went home that night and I went through my library, searching through Aikido books, the Japanese styles, through the Kung Fu and Qigong books, the Chinese internal styles. In every style that I looked, I found that same symbol. And I also found the meaning of that symbol. The symbol meant the sun god or the Tao. I was not sure how to tell my students. I mean, how do you tell close to 100 people that an art that we had been teaching at the school was actually invoking the spirit of the sun god?
No, it's not! They were in a circle! This is like if I heard someone say this, I'd be like, hey, like, we need to get you help. Like, if you're seeing this and you're genuinely connecting patterns like this, like, you might be developing, like, something like a delusional disorder, like schizophrenia. Like, this is not good. Like, if this was a friend of mine, I would be genuinely concerned that they were, like, connecting things like this. He with Goblin says, look, my country's national anthem is kinda lame, so I'm a bit jealous that the Americans get something that at least sounds sick on a whammy bar. But the French have got us all beat. Take a second to look at the lyrics to the Marseillaise, I don't know how to pronounce that, and tell me that it isn't metal as fuck. I just know how it sounds. So
the next week at my advanced class, the high rank class, I told my students I had a homework project for them. I wanted them to go home and do research on this symbol. So I drew the symbol on our chalkboard.
Depraved Ambiance with a link says it's literally just a picture of the sun. Excuse me, Fenekagami says, fun fact, Shaolin monks actually fought the devil made flesh. In Japan, when Oda Nobunaga was trying to unify the country, he demanded the loyalty of the Shaolin monastery and tried to kill them when they refused. They were so good at fighting off Oda that he was forced to hire the Ida ninja clan to burn the temple down. This enraged one of the Oda's rivals, who declared himself the defender of Buddhism, and Oda responded calling himself the Demon King under the sixth heaven, basically Satan. Oh, well, that's a lot.
And I gave them their assignment. The following week, when I came in, it was like dead silence. You could have heard a pin drop. Each one of those students was very solemn. I asked them to get up and present before the class what they had.
They probably were like, is our instructor having a mental breakdown? And he was. He was having a mental breakdown after disassociating super hard.
Found. And when I'd given them this assignment, I told them that it didn't matter where they found their information. I just wanted to see what they could find on that symbol. They looked in history books, they looked in Aztec and Mayan writings, they looked in Egyptian hieroglyphics, they looked in Greek, Roman.
The idea of a circle with a dot in it or a circle with another circle in it is such a generic, obvious symbol that it's probably all over the place. You're never going to find one thing that symbol means because it's so universal and easy to contrive that it's going to be used to represent endless concepts.
They looked in Babylonian. They also looked in tattoo books. They looked in...
That's an Ouroboros.
Books on Wicca and witchcraft. And each one of them, one after another, got up and presented the information they had found. And all of them, regardless of the source, found the same thing. The symbol of the sun god, or the Tao, or Yin and Yang, as it is known in the Chinese. After doing this, after realizing what this symbol...
I just thought it was a hydrogen atom.
...really stood for, one of my students asked, what does this mean?
Yeah, those are not the same.
How does this change what we're doing? And I told him from that point on, we would no longer be teaching that class. We would no longer be teaching the art of Bagua. But as I went home that night, I knew that there was more.
I need to find a new martial arts school. My teacher stopped teaching us because he's having a mental breakdown and thinks everything is demonic.
Than what I had just seen. So I began searching through all of the studies that I had done, all of my books and literature on the internal martial arts of Tai Chi and Yoga and Qigong, and even the Shaolin arts. And as I searched, I began to realize that there was more working within these arts than I had wanted to believe. Memories of my mother's apprehension and discernment when I took that first step on that night so long ago.
Oh my God.
Now it was becoming clear.
He's completely deluded.
That the spiritual forces which enabled the abilities in the arts I had practiced had also wrought in my family.
It's like at some point he had a mental breakdown when he had that disassociative event, and he couldn't handle what he had done to his life and family, so he externalized all those feelings. No, I can't be guilty. I can't really be this guilty about decisions I made and mistakes I made that hurt people. It must be the martial arts that are evil. Like, it genuinely feels like he had a serious mental break here in a realization moment of, oh my God, what have I done? And in inability to cope with his own culpability, he externalized all of it in a very extreme way. That's really sad.
Destruction. But now the Lord was calling me. My son, it is time to come home. He was fighting to set me free from the chains in which I was bound, and revealing to my wife and children the power of his unfailing word. And as the Lord was reuniting our marriage and family, he was also restoring sight to my blinded eyes. Within a week, I made the announcement to my student body that we were no longer going to be offering or teaching the internal arts such as Tai Chi, Qigong, Bagua, and even Shaolin Kung Fu. Now I was trying to separate and divide the martial arts physical from the martial arts spiritual. This was very difficult. I attempted it for probably 6 or 7 months. At the end of 7 months, I realized that you cannot separate the spiritual roots of martial arts from their physical practice. When I made this announcement to my students, I lost probably 40% of my student body.
I mean, yeah, you stopped giving the service that you were trying to give them.
This, it hurt financially, but it also hurt to know that I had lost students, some of which had been with me for many years. One night I came home from teaching class. It was late, probably 11:30, almost 12 o'clock. I walked in the door, and as I walked through the kitchen, I remember setting down my gym bag, my workout bag, beside the doorway. I stepped over to the refrigerator to get something to drink. As my hand reached out to open the refrigerator door, the hair on the back of my neck stood on end. I felt an enormous presence behind me, something that terrified me. After all,
were you having a panic attack? Again, it sounds like this guy is having a lot of, like, issues mentally with stress and recognizing what he's done to his life, and he's having, like, disassociative incidents, panic attacks, anxiety attacks. But again, instead of recognizing the internal reality of what is happening, he's externalizing it onto supernatural forces.
These years in martial arts and full contact fighting, I thought I wasn't afraid of anything. What this was behind me terrified me. I didn't know what to do. It was like in that moment, all these thoughts, all the teachings of the masters I had read and studied under went racing through my mind. Do I fight? Do I run? But neither one would have done any good. Both were futile. And I was scared to turn around. I did not even want to see what this was that was towering behind me. It felt like it was 10 or 12 feet tall. It was enormous. At that moment, I heard a name sounding in my ears. The name of Jesus Christ.
Oh my God.
And as I heard that name, there was a spark of hope. And I thought, is it possible that he would save me even after everything that I've done, even after the pain and the hurt that I've caused my family and others? Will he save and deliver me? In Acts chapter 2, we have been given the promise that whosoever calls upon the name of the Lord shall be delivered.
Convenient that his ex-wife is a hardcore evangelical Christian, isn't it?
Delivered. I thought, can it really be that simple? Is it possible? Will he really hear and come to my rescue? In that moment, I fell to my knees. I looked up and I cried out with all that I had within me. Jesus, save me. Jesus, Yeshua, save me. I don't know how long I cried. Tears were rolling down my face. I could still feel that presence behind me, and I just kept calling on the name of Jesus Christ.
So yeah, he was probably having a panic attack or something, and he attributed religious significance to it.
After what seemed like an eternity, I felt something else enter the room. It was as though a hand grabbed this thing that was behind me, this spirit, this demon that was standing behind me, and flung it out of the room. I didn't see anything, but it was as though you could feel it. I was, covered in tears, and I was crying out to the Lord. At that moment, I came to know the Lord as my personal Savior. At that moment, the Lord had shown himself that he was mighty to save.
In August 2007, after nearly 5 years of separation and divorce, Eric and his wife Sarah were reunited in the covenant and bonds of holy matrimony on a quiet beach in southern Florida. Oh, he's a Florida guy! That contextualizes a lot of things, doesn't it? Profane Priestess says, to correct his bullshit, the most famous Asian sun deity is Amaterasu. Sorry for mispronouncing that. So I'll assume she's who he means. Amaterasu is the most powerful and important deity, or kami, of the Shinto faith. She's the goddess of light and the sun. She's also regarded as the imperial family's divine ancestor, the god who gifted them the regalia and their right to rule. And there's a second part coming. The Wilson family stepped out in faith and heeded Christ's admonition, "Go tell what great things the Lord hath done for you." Eric currently shares the good news about Christ and victory over sin through speaking engagements in media. Sheesh. There is a part 2. He did a second part that's even longer. How in the world... what is part 2 even about? We're probably not going to watch this right now, but I at least want to see what's the opening.
And there was war.
Of course he's not the bad guy. He's the main character. How can he be the bad guy?
There was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought, and his angels, and prevailed not. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, the accuser which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out unto the earth, and his angels were cast out with him.
Gas pump. Gas pump is evil?
Well, he trained kids for years in self-defense. Now a martial arts instructor is defending himself in court, accused of sexually assaulting a student.
Fucking what? Wow. Really trying to get away with using footage of Star Wars there. It's on the tiniest screen and fuzzy. You don't need to get permission to use these clips. It falls under fair use. It's fine.
Do you really believe in magic?
In Chinese black magic.
Yes.
Big Trouble in Little China.
Oh, absolutely.
Are you still serious about this? And monsters and ghosts as well, I suppose.
Oh, sure. And sorcery.
And I'm
concerned about the copyright on this, so I'm gonna skip. Would recommend, though.
The floodgates of Eastern mysticism and New Age thought were opened in the West through cinema and literature, focused on a generation searching for its identity. With the Cultural Revolution, Woodstock and the Beatles, martial arts, yoga, and the introduction of transcendental meditation found a growing acceptance among baby boomers.
Okay, I'm gonna save this one for another day, because we don't have time to go through the next hour and a half. It takes a lot longer to cover, usually, so. Let's, fill some time with some of the bullshito stuff. Energy, martial arts. Fail? You guys have probably seen this somewhere at this point. But, there's some pretty funny scammers who claim to do mystical martial arts. This is one of my favorite clips of all time from this kind of thing.
Breathe in.
This grifter claims to teach people energy martial arts, but he just hurts this lady real bad.
Pull the energy in. Pull it down. And push the energy out the hand. Big breath. More power. More power.
He's claiming you can create a force field.
More passion. More power. Big.
Oh yeah, where he aid trains the lady. Yeah.
Look into the hands. Good. Good. Yes, Magnus. Good. Good. You want to defend? As soon as you see me move, everything you got in there, you push it out. Well, can we do it? We can do it. Hold on. Let's go. Sure.
So this is what's supposed to happen. The idea is that, oh, you're creating a force field with your body energy that'll stop you. So here's what happens when the lady tries to do it.
You ready? Yes, come here.
This poor woman. Don't get me wrong, she's getting grifted, but she doesn't deserve this shit.
Stand here. And Magnus and Rebecca, you prepare her.
Unironically, this is kind of uncomfortable, so if you're not ready to watch someone get full-on tackled, look away for a second. Oh, shit, that sucks. Oh, that sucks so bad. Oh, bodied. Absolutely fucking bodied. Oh. And he starts shaking to make it about him. Oh, her poor spine. This guy's a douchebag. Part 2 from Amber says, the Tower Tao is the chief spiritual concept in the Taoist faith. It is not a god, rather it's a spiritually revered force of idea. It is, to vastly oversimplify, a plan, a way in which all of nature proceeds. Think of it as the sum total of all laws of physics. All things proceed according to the Tao, and by resisting it, you create strife in yourself and the world. By following the flow of the Tao, things flow naturally, and you are at peace. She didn't do it right, so I wrecked her. Yeah, wrecked her. I hardly know her. And here's the no-touch knockout guy. Absolute full of shit.
Chi, it flows throughout the body.
Andronicus Khan says, don't know if you've seen it, but Super Eye Patch Wolf has a really good video about fake martial arts. I do believe I've seen it.
Without it, you don't function. And it's a radio wave.
Science can't find Chi. It doesn't exist as far as science can tell.
Without a doubt, George Dillman is a force to be reckoned with.
Byfield X, thanks for following.
He's a 9th degree black belt who has taught everyone from Muhammad Ali to Bruce Lee. And he's able to drop just about anyone using applications of pressure to certain points along the body.
You can't take it there. He's probably weak right here. You okay? This way at the same time. Pressure point knockouts are the easiest way to put a person down.
Fun fact, in magician work, this is called instant stooging.
I can put the largest person that you can find in the world, and I've done this. With that finger, I can put him on the floor. It's the guy that's the big guy, he's mad at me on the street.
But that's
so what's actually happening here is that the social pressure and expectation that you should fall down when you do this makes you do it because it's an uncomfortable situation if you don't do it. Like stage hypnotism.
The beginning. Dillman claims to have adapted this technique to where he can knock a person out without having to touch them.
Use chi energy out of this hand, and we're going to affect up on the head at the third eye. So snap, couple. Back, back, back. There we go.
All of these karate techniques are made possible by manipulating chi.
He makes a chi ball. He'll get the radio frequency going between the hands, and if you get up and feel, it's actually hotter inside that ball. I've seen him all.
I mean, it might be a little because you have a space where you have like human body parts right there, and they're next to each other, so there might be a little warmth. But no, it's not energy, not in the way you're describing at least. It's not magic, it's just body heat, because humans are warm-blooded.
Already knocked people over with it. He throws the chi in such a way.
Is gooning a sin? I hope not.
That when he catches it, it knocks him backwards.
For Dillman,
Prophet and Priestess with their third message says, Haijito, or yin-yang, is a secondary force in Taoist theology. It represents the interplay between darkness and light, feminine and masculine. These concepts are intertwined and cannot be separated. They exist in all things, and you should work to balance and harness both. I'm sorry for ranting, but as someone studying anthropology and history, correcting this kind of misinformation is very important to me. You're good. Thanks for the info.
Qi is like electrical circuitry that he can turn on or off with a simple, well-placed punch, or even just a tap.
We enter the Qi into pressure points that both accept Qi or give off Qi.
Just gonna barely just tap them.
I use ones to give off Qi, put it into ones that accept Qi.
That's fine, Tea Time Tea. I was into weird stuff when I was 12, too. I was into, like, you know, oh, Bigfoot's probably real, and, like, ghosts and stuff. Turns out they're not real, unfortunately.
We, in essence, turn their light switches down.
And now I'm still into these things, just on the other end of it, talking about why they're interesting concepts, but not real, you know?
It kicks out their circuit breaker panel in the back. Pressure points can be dangerous. I've flatlined several people.
They come to see Dillman's remarkable ability to move walls of people from 10 feet away when they can't even see him, by channeling his Qi at them and interrupting their auras.
I lock with their aura, and I move the line. I shouldn't tell you this, but I play with people in Starbucks, and I just stood there, and I moved the line. And they all moved, and they all looked back at me at the same time. They went like this, and I looked back, too, like it was happening to me. I looked because I didn't want them to know I did this, right?
But what really draws the audience's attention is Dillman's no-touch knockout, a karate move that could theoretically revolutionize combat as we know it, except that it can take years to learn. Essentially, he claims to be able to knock anyone out without touching any part of their body by just throwing a giant Qi whammy at them.
Sometimes it drains me. I can get that way within a second or two if I throw the Qi out too fast. Back.
After seeing so
Gotta
many
be careful not to
demonstrations,
throw the Qi out too fast.
so many different techniques, so many different moves, you can't help but start believing.
They're opening up another door in your mind. It's just unbelievable.
I know I have Qi energy. You can see it with the half moons. My Qi is up now because of the filming. I have half moons in my fingertips now. That means the Qi is just coming out.
But is the mysterious energy called Qi really what's giving Dillman and his followers such extraordinary powers? Or is it, as skeptics suggest, simply a form of hypnotic suggestion? It's time for a showdown. In one corner, weighing in at no more than 125 pounds, is chemist Luigi Garlascelli. He thinks he can stand up to a knockout punch of Qi because it doesn't exist. In the other corner, it's 8th degree black belt Leon J., one of George Dillman's top associates and fellow practitioner of the no-touch knockout. This ought to be interesting.
In fact, when we did the test on Luigi...
I love when the woo-woo martial artists, like, have to fight or interact with anyone that isn't already believing their bullshit, and it just does nothing. Beautiful.
was not ready to believe these things. Or maybe was just staying there, seeing what would happen.
M. Scheffler, thanks for 34 months.
It didn't work.
Dillman thinks he knows what went wrong and has come up with a very interesting explanation.
The skeptic was a totally non-believer. Plus,
if your ability to knock someone out depends on their belief that you can knock them out without touching them, then you can't knock people out without touching them.
I don't know if I should say that on film, but if the guy had his tongue in the wrong position of the mouth, that can also nullify it.
Like he realized the last excuse was basically an admission that the whole thing is bullshit, and now he's like, no, wait, it's his tongue. His tongue's in a weird place.
Yeah, you can nullify it. You can nullify a lot of things done to you. In fact, you can nullify them if you raise those two big toes. Plus, if I say I'm going to knock you out, and you raise one toe and push one toe down, can't knock you out. And then if I go to try again, you reverse it. If you keep doing this, I won't knock you out. Plus, the skeptic was a totally non-believer. Plus, and I moved the line. Plus, I've flatlined several people. Plus, I know I have chi energy. You can see it with the half moons. My chi is up now because of the filming. I have half moons in my fingertips now. Plus, I can put the largest person that you can find in the world, and I've done this, with that finger, I can put him on the floor.
What do you want that finger do, though? MH Sharkbee says, "Hey Hannah, as a fellow horror fan, I need to share this. They are my new love and thankfully have payment plans." Oh boy, toy snobs. I've never seen this website. Oh, look it! It's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but they're, oh my god, they're Michael Myers, Jason, Leatherface, and Freddy Krueger. That's cute. I like those. $50 a piece. Are these custom? They print them? They're pretty cool. I like them. I'm not a big figure collector, so I wouldn't spend money on it, but I see why someone would. Those are cool. It's a form of performance anxiety as magic doesn't work when he's being filmed, of course. Did that say Mikey Myers? That would make the most sense.
So he knows 9 and 10. And he just
This is the same guy.
Right in here. Right there.
I mean, yeah, you judo chop someone in the neck, then they're not expecting it, and it's probably not gonna go great for them. That's not an energy thing, that's a you chop someone in the neck thing.
Right there.
Oh! That's a shame. That's a real shame. That one's not mystical. Again, that's just hitting someone right in the neck when they don't expect it. So. Oh boy. Are they doing a Cells at Work movie? Wow, they're doing a Cells at Work movie. That's cool. Let's see, is there anything else before we end for the day? Because I don't have enough time to watch the second one. See if I just search evil martial arts, if anything else comes out. It's me! Look it! It's like staring into the abyss, and I'm staring back, and I don't like being the abyss. Oh, here's the same guy doing a live thing, because of course he is.
Had a chance to catch up with Vito Rallo, who is the author of a new book called Exposing the Dangers Behind Martial Arts and Yoga. Let me begin, Vito, if I could, by asking you, what's your personal background in martial arts?
Well, my background was involved in Shotokan karate, and I was in that for nearly 30 years. I do have extensive work in the martial arts so that I can speak as an expert of it. I was a 5-time national champion. I was an instructor in 2 different universities, and Throughout the history of my involvement in the martial arts, I gained a lot of knowledge of what to do, what not to do.
So at some point then you got the revelation that this was not healthy, that there was dangers in it. So when did that happen?
Well, that happened when about 3 years ago when I began to do some research. Now, I didn't want to do the research because the Lord had pulled me totally out of it. Right. But then there were church people and other people that got me back in. There were church people that actually got me involved once again in it against my true knowledge of knowing what was in the martial arts. And so from that point on, everything seemed to go downhill until the Lord finally delivered me out of the martial.
I made Shark Beast says I had to laugh at this. Nice to see Australia's weird. Oh God, what's this?
Today I rise to address an oft-forgotten segment of our society. I speak of Generation Z, who will be playing a substantial role in the next election, and Generation Alpha, who will start to come of age the election after. It is for this reason that I shall now render the remainder of my statement using language they're familiar with.
Oh God, this is gonna hurt.
To the Sigmas of Australia, I say that this goofy-air government have been capping.
AF, not AF.
Not just now, but for a long time. A few of you may remember when they said there'll be no phantom tax under the government I lead. They're capaholics. They're also yapaholics. They yap non-stop about how their cost of living measures are changing lives for all Australians. Just put the fries in the bag, little bro. They tell us that they're locked in on improving the housing situation in this country. They must have brain rot from watching too much Kai Cenat and forgot about their plans to ban social media for kids under 14. If that becomes law, you can forgo skull emoji all about watching Duke Dennis or catching a dub with the bros on Fort. Chat, is this Prime Minister serious?
I hate when people use chat that way. God damn it, chat. I have a reason to do it. I have a chat. I have it. You're it.
Even though he's the Prime Minister of Australia, sometimes it feels like he's the CEO of Ohio. I would be taking an L if I did not mention the ops, who want to cut...
No, Harold Edelman, I don't get the impression this person is right-wing. I just think they're trying to get a clip. You know, they're trying to get something shared around, and it worked, because here we are, watching it.
WA's get.
She's speaking out against the Australian government banning people under 14 from being on social media.
And services tax. The decision voters will be making in a few months' time will be between a mid-government, a dog-water opposition, or a crossbench that will mog both of them. Though some of you cannot yet vote, I hope when you do, it will be in a more goated Australia for a government with more aura. Skibbity.
I want to die. Alright, so that's it. Thanks everyone for hanging out. I appreciate y'all. I had a fun day today. Let's see who we're gonna raid. I should be back tomorrow. I do have electrolysis, so we'll see how that goes. If it's particularly rough, I might not end up doing it, but should be fine. Love you too, Mr. Blast. I'll see the rest of you soon. And like I said, Wednesday and Sunday we're going to be doing patron-only live shows, which the YouTube members are also going to be allowed to join. So have a great night, everyone, and I'll see you soon. Boo-doo, boo, boo-doo, boo-doo, boo. Boo-doo-boo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. Oh, and Wednesday the documentary I'm in comes out, so that's cool. Maybe we'll watch that? I don't know. Have a good night, everyone. Bye.